Yo, what's up? It's DJ Crowley here once again. It's Simmer Down Live from home, and we are getting dubby once again with the one, the only Jesse King, Dubmatix in the house. What's going on, man?
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. We were having a little bit of a pre-conversation before the recording, just saying how long it's taken us to make this happen. But I think we hit the money because it's summer, it's the peak of summer, and what other better time of year is there for reggae and dub?
Absolutely, man. We were talking. It was like, getting with Nikolai, big up Nikolai and Echo Beach over
Yes,
in
man.
France and everything for, setting this up. We got the Dub Spencer and Trance Hill interview. Those guys are absolutely amazing. And then they kind of, how networks work in our business. Networks are so important. And
Yeah.
and they got us to Jesse and to today.
It's a very small world, so you
Yeah.
get to know, like, knowing Nikolai and then Spencer and Trans Hill, myself, like they're in Germany, I'm in Canada, you're in Knoxville, I believe.
Yep.
And it really becomes a small community of people that all kind of know each other. The network is there if you've been around for a few years. And it's one of the great joys that I appreciate being in this world for so many years is that we're all kind of connected, probably through one person. You could get to somebody else.
Absolutely. And it's your network is your family. That's what this thing is. Reggae music is a family.
Mhm.
And you are obviously a part of the family. I want to get into some
Thanks, man.
Dubmatix. What do you think?
Sure.
So you are, interesting. I for some reason I thought you were, not like from the UK, but based out of the UK. But you are Toronto, man. Toronto,
Mm.
Canada. We've got some homies, extended network,
Okay.
Astrocolor, Neil out west in Western Canada. And we
Right
were
on.
actually supposed to get to Toronto earlier this year to work with DubFX, Mr.
Okay.
Ben out of
I know he was in town.
Australia.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, Lee's Palace, man, and we didn't get to make it up there, and we got the flu hard
Ooh,
right
man.
before we were supposed to get in the car. So, good thing is we did not spread that up to the DubFX crew who were on tour
Hmm.
internationally. Bad
Yeah,
thing is we did
yeah.
unfortunately miss that, but we will get back with him for sure. I do want to ask you about Canada and Toronto, especially, man.
Hmm.
Every single city and region has its own little network, like we were talking about in family. Tell us about Toronto and the scene and how cool Canada and Toronto is.
I think for the reggae scene, I mean, there's always a lot of music, but within Toronto specifically, as a starting point, is that it has its ebbs and flows. Like I remember the 80s was a hotbed because there was more venues that hosted reggae. You also had Leroy Sibbles was in town, groups like the Satellites who were very popular and had made it onto mainstream radio with some cover songs, much like UB40 did. And then the main thing, there was an infrastructure. There was radio, it was community and college radio, there was venues, but then it kind of changed because one of the big ones closed down. And then there's the artists. Are they interested or not? I think with today's times, playing live is not as easy. I think it's a lot more difficult here. There's only a few places.
Hmm.
I got to give a shout out to my buddy Vaz, who started a club called Basement. And it's really from his love of music and working with reggae and different genres, but he kind of wanted to have his own spot. So now he's kind of bringing in a new generation of artists and singers from international waters as well as here. I think we've always had a very dynamic music scene overall, especially since they kind of Bare Naked Ladies and more Alanis Morissette, Celine Dion kicked it off as far as international awareness. And so
Mhm.
once you get down to like blues, jazz world, we're kind of on the tail end where we get to piggyback on some of that because people are a little bit more aware of Canada and that there is a music scene, especially when you got like Drake, and Justin Bieber and others. So there's that slight trickle down effect. For me, I knew that because I've been doing this for over 20 years now that I the scene here has been very, very supportive of what I've been doing, but it's also very limited, right? I mean, we're now up to 40 million people, but we're the second largest landmass next to, I think, China in the world. So it's a vast territory between major cities. So I got lucky really by Europe, finding connection in Europe. In fact, it was through a friend of Nikolai's that was like the one guy. There's always a couple people in your life that change everything. And there was one guy from Hamburg, Karsten Free, and connected through him, email, sent him a CD, and then led to everything else that I have there. And
Boom.
then for US, I had a nice network of radio stations, but again, it was a gentleman named Dane who puts on the Victoria Ska and Reggae Festival, who connected me with the Easy Star label,
Yeah.
the crew there, and then that led to all this other network there. So it's a network, and you slowly get to know people over time. But there's a lot of great, talented reggae artists here. The biggest challenge is for them to find a way to get outside exposure. That's the biggest challenge.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and each and every region and city has their own ups and downs, pros and cons,
Exactly.
challenges. Interesting. You're like reading my mind. I was going to go to Europe, big up Echo Beach and Nikolai. And I thought it was interesting what you said, that one person can be that one thing that just connects everything. And
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
that is very true. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're late. We got Jesse Dubmatix in the
Yeah,
house,
yeah.
Toronto, Canada. We're talking about Canada in general in Toronto. And I like to, ask my artist, about their specific home and not just their home, their scene within music,
Yeah.
because it is so diverse and different. Everybody's got a different answer. But I do want to move on to your actual music, man,
Sure,
because
man.
I got to say this, the amount the sheer amount of music that you are releasing this year, especially, is mind boggling.
Yeah,
It really
yeah.
is. I want to talk about some of the music, especially Rewired. Let's get into it. What you got going on?
So Reward was the latest album that I consider a Dubmatix album. So it was a 10-year span between Rebel Massive and this one. In between was the album with Sly and Robbie, different collaborations with Berlin Sessions, UK artists, different French Sessions, which was a whole collaborative effort with French artists and singers. So they were all sung in French. I did the music. So all these different projects, but this was the first kind of real, I consider Dubmatix one in 10 years. But, with COVID and everything that came on, it actually started years and years ago. Some of the songs date back to one goes back to 2014, and then 2016, 2017, and then the rest kind of more current, and finally put it together. The cover art, I have to give a shout out to Nico, who actually runs Irie Magazine. He did that. He's also just an extraordinary artist who's he did Dread or Alive, which is a
Mm,
fantastic comic. So he did that with me. Community effort, but it's one of those weird things that because it was evolved over several years and then the release got delayed because of COVID, right? You couldn't put it in stores, people, just the whole process. We all kind of know what happens. That by the time it finally came out this year, I had already felt like I'd lived with it for a couple of years. It was kind of like, let's move on to the next stuff,
mm.
which is an interesting position in because I'm ready to produce music, but you still have to work with this album, right? So it's been this little hybrid. So kind of what we did is like the EP that I sent you, where I created remix versions and alternative versions. So it kept it more interesting for me because some of these songs I've heard for years now. So how do you keep the interest? And also, I think it offered a little bit more variety for radio and anybody listening. You could have a dance hall version, a jungle version, a funk version. So that made it a little bit more interesting for me.
Yeah, man, that makes sense. I look at my release radar, every week. Spotify's the new deal now. It just is.
Yeah.
And and it's just like Dubmatix. And I'm like, how is he doing? That makes sense now.
Yeah.
We call it the jam demic, because there's no music.
Yeah. Yeah.
But having all this time, this backlog of music, you can start just pushing it out, more and more and more. Real quick, how can everybody find you if they're interested in Rewired? And then we'll move on a little bit.
I'd say the best place to go is Bandcamp. Just type in Dubmatix because that one is the one, but it's got all the music. You can listen to it. I will tell you though, this year I set and why there's so much music coming on. There's always been a tradition, especially the roots are in Jamaica, where you release singles, right? And it's not uncommon. And then of course a lot of the UK guys and sound or European artists and sound systems do singles. And I'd never really worked on singles. So it was twofold. This year I decided in that I wanted to try to create a song idea every single day, just 8 bars, see where
Hmm.
it went. Didn't matter if it was good or bad, just to kind of get my chops going, keep myself focused. And what emerged out of this was a plethora of songs because I would pick one and go, this one I can work with. And it began with, okay, I'll put this up. And well, it needs a visual. Let's create a little visual. Some of them were 10 seconds, and it was 15 seconds, 30 seconds, then a minute. And then I haven't done one in a couple months because I went on tour and then moved, but they ended up being full-length songs, which led to putting out the Ska Sessions album, all these dub songs, all these individual tracks. But it was all just in the idea, can I put out or create a song idea every day, then put them out on Spotify? Let's see what happens. It's really just been an experiment to see what happens and what you can do, um, which has been fascinating because I've seen more interest, but I also developed more ska, which is a genre that I rarely ever touch. I kind of just dove deep into that, and that opened up some interesting new connections and people out there, which is that's the point, right? Connecting with other people. So you see this whole other side of people that are ska heads, because ska heads are like dedicated, man. They are
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
ska for life,
Yep.
and I love them, man. So yeah.
You've got a man, you've got you're very, very well spoken, and I love taking quotes. This kind of relates. I approach music and creating with an open mind. When you change things up, it makes you think differently. That's
Mhm.
very, very, very important, just looking different directions. I want to talk about dub. It
All
is
right.
personally our that's our go-to, man.
It's your
Dub is
core.
so important, and we had the pleasure of speaking with the legendary Hopeton Brown, aka Scientist,
Yeah.
recently, and we talked about dub. His definition of dub was dub is a recomposition of an existing piece of music. What is your definition, and what is your way? How do you dub?
I'd say for me, dub is the opportunity to experiment in ways that you may not have the ability to with other genres. Because its foundation is drum and bass, there are certain songs that are dub songs that are they are just drum and bass. There's no other instrumentation, but it's what can you do with so little to make it so big and
Mm,
create a full, interesting song. And that's what I think appeals to me is that it has inexhaustible potential. There is no real limits. Like if you're looking at pop music, either you're writing pop music that's current, so there's a standard formula, you know. If there's country, you have to have certain elements into it to define it. Same with blues. Whereas dub, the element really is going to be your drum groove and say the bass line, but there's no reason you can't play any kind of bass line. There's no defined, this is a reggae bass line, this is a dub. I mean, we know it by ear when we hear it, but it's what you do with the space and the minimum effects, say, of reverb and echo and say phaser. With those three effects, their world is your oyster. So for me, there's really the two core types of dub. There's the Lee Scratch Perry style of dub, which was very experimental.
mhm.
And then you've got King Tubby, which he approached it from much more of a melodic interpretation, where he created new songs out of existing songs. Especially when you listen to King Tubby Meets Rockers Uptown, that for me is the definitive dub album of all time. Me
Mm.
personally, that's what got me in. That was the album. That's why I'm doing now what I'm doing now, and they're very, very different. They both cross over in a lot of ways for the experimentation, but it's that ability to take anything and dubify it. Like I did years ago. It wasn't there's a opera singer in Hamburg, Uli, and through Karsten and the whole crew there and some people in Berlin, we did remixes of opera and dub. So it was a little bit something different. I've dubbed up. It's just a brass band. There was no other instrumentation, just brass. But you could take that and create something else. So I think that's what I love about the dub is the inexhaustible opportunity for experimentation.
I love it. It's always a different answer, man. And
Yeah.
let's keep it on the dub thing, but let's talk about the greats. Like I said, we got to, get to know, Hopeton and the scientist, man, King Tubby's, you know, right hand man, and you know, I got to see Lee Scratch Perry years and years ago. Well, I would say about 5, 6 years ago. Rest in peace.
Mhm.
Have you had any very memorable or powerful experiences with some of the greats like that you'd like to talk about, that like made you go whoa, or you know, that moment in your life?
Well, I think the King Tubby album that I mentioned was one of those defining albums because I started playing drums first, then I learned bass when I was started playing that when I was 11 years old. So by the time I was about 15 or 16, a family friend handed me this album. Now, by then, I was pretty much just listening to Bob Marley. So I was well versed in Marley, but not too much else, maybe some club stuff. But it's one of those albums that, and we all have several albums in our life that kind of, you put them on and you go, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it shows you, it opens a new door. And I think that's exactly what that album did. Other artists put its songs along the way. I could be Fisherman, that, you know, certain songs you're like, there's just something about the sonics, the musicality of it, the instrumentation of it, that just capture you and captivate you in a way that are indelible in your mind and they remain there. So even to this day, when I'm creating, like, my original sound was trying to copy King Tubby, but you can never copy King Tubby. So you end up kind of creating your own style. And that's one of the things I've noticed, that on the odd occasion, people are worried about other people sounding like them. Well, the reality is you'll never sound like anybody else. And, you know, if you're trying to, you inevitably can't help it. You will, you know, put in your own flavor because it's
Mm-hmm.
who you are and it's how you hear things. So I think that's the great thing, because of him. Say, one of the things I love about Marley, it was Carlton Barrett's drumming and Family Man's style of bass playing. Where if you listen to Sly and Robbie, you know, they're very militant. They're very almost 8 bars and that's it. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
did the album with them, and it was basically remixing a dub album, so I had to figure out how to interpret an existing dub album. Most of those songs began with just 8 bars, and that's what I built the top. But then you can go to Family Man, and his bass lines are much more melodic. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they'll start and they'll stay in upper registers, they'll bounce around. There's a chorus, there's different progressions that he'll use. So you get both of those, and it kind of gives you two different ideas of what you can do, where you can go, and build it from there. So yeah, I could talk about this stuff all day long. It's
I
just a
know.
never-ending ball of fun. I have about 25 plus delays that I for as far gear, because I can't help it. I'm like, I gotta have anything that's called a delay. I want it.
Oh yeah, I mean the reverberation of sound is just such a cool thing, and
Yeah.
dub is like it's like our secret weapon of our scene, man. Like reggae music is, that's what I call it. It's our secret weapon. We can pull it out at any moment, and people be like, "Whoa, what is that?" And it's that
Yeah, yeah.
recomposition, you know. So hey, if you're just tuning in, you're late. You're late. You're late. You're late. But it's okay.
We're glad
We
you're
got.
here though.
We're glad you're here. We got Jesse King, aka
Yeah.
Dubmatix, Toronto, Canada, in the house. It's been a long time coming. We're talking about dub. We're talking about the greats. We're talking about Toronto. I do want to, number one, congratulate on your Juno Award.
Thank you, man.
For, you know, I mean, that's a huge you know, thing. When reggae musicians and producers get awards, it's always powerful, because it wasn't always a thing, with the exception of that reggae Grammy. So big up on
Mhm.
that.
Thank you, man.
Congratulations. Yeah, for sure. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, defying genres. You know, you're talking about country, you can do this, you can do that. And, you know, I was talking with Michael Goldwasser, Easy Star, the other
Yeah, yeah.
day,
Of course.
and man, he's got
Incredible
some
musician.
amazing things to say. And he was talking about, you know, what our goal with Easy Star has always been is to break down genre barriers. And you were kind of talking about that. And then we kind of got into this whole thing about the idea of like when you, because you said something, when there's a song that you love, you want to just listen to it over and over again.
Mhm.
And I was asking him, like, that's why I kind of feel like it's a "Can You Feel It" song, one of those most powerful moments. What makes a song one of those ones that you just like, oh my God, I gotta listen to that again? What is that? What is that?
I think, when I approach a song, there's two things that I listen to. Does it keep my attention the whole way? Does it give me a feeling? Like that's really what music is. You, it has to bring some form of emotion.
Hmm.
And music, we know, it can pinpoint moments of your life. You can hear a song from 20 years ago and remember that's what I was doing around that time. I remember this piece of my life. So they're like little uh, shards of your memory are become part of that song because you connect with it. And I don't know if there's a way that you can define what it is. There's just whatever it is, maybe the lyrics, the vocals, the production of the song, the instrumentation, like I said, there's just something about it that you love. Like I could say that I'm not a huge fan of ballads, right? My thing is I love energetic music. So whether it's like punk rock or steppers, I love high energy stuff. And that's the stuff I will tend to connect with, aside from say King Tubby, which is a different kind of thing.
Right.
Um, but that's what grabs you, and when you do have those songs, man, I love it. And so when I write songs, I will listen to these things. I'm going to guess 100, times as I'm working on them. And once I get to the point I'm happy with it, I will listen to it, listen to it, listen to it, listen to it, listen to it. And that's when I know if I don't hear anything that bothers me in the song anymore, and it gives me some kind of good feeling, then I know it's done and I move on. And I will
Yeah.
probably never listen to it again unless I'm playing it live. It's
Exactly.
over. Yeah.
The
Because
release
I've
day, you're
heard
like,
it.
I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm
Yeah,
good.
that's it. But yeah, I mean, music's such a wonderful and creative art form because it does become part of your life in many ways, defining moments. It's defining moments for you rather than, you know, I don't know. It's probably the best way you can remember things,
You're
if that makes
absolutely
sense.
right. Yeah. And it's a feeling first, man. It's a passion. We're going to talk about passion here at the end. I got a couple more questions for you. Jesse, thank you so
Yeah,
much for
my pleasure.
tuning in with us here on this beautiful Monday. We got Jesse, we got Dubmatix in the house. A few more questions for you, man. One thing that you said money is never an issue. And that linked me to you immediately. I hate money. Unfortunately, you have to have it.
Mhm.
Why did you say that? Why is money never an issue?
Well, I let me put that in proper context. What I like to say is that people don't get into reggae for money because it's one of those genres that even if you compare it to say blues or world music, and I can't statistically say this is accurate, but I think it has a lesser infrastructure, right? In certain areas, like in Canada, it's very difficult.
Mhm.
There's probably more outlets for blues musicians, but just like blues musicians, you're never going to be rich off it. I mean, there's always going to be some artists that rise up and very successful, but on a whole, um, it's just not a genre that you walk into thinking, yeah, I'm gonna crush this financially. I'm gonna be a millionaire.
Mhm.
It's the kind of thing that you do it because you love it. And it really speaks to you, it connects to you. I mean, I played blues, I played acid jazz, I played rock bands, um, hip hop, but there's just something about reggae that draws me in and makes me want to create it and be part of it. And I love the culture. I loved reading about the history of reggae, especially in Jamaica in the 60s and 70s, how it was very much like a Motown, but their own version of a Motown where there
Mhm.
was, I think it probably Channel One or Studio One. I think it was Studio One, where at one point Leroy Sibbles was the music director, and it might say be a Sunday, and they would do auditions. And so there'd be a lineup of singers, and you had to come with two songs and you walk in, play two songs, and if one worked, he said, "Okay, you come back tomorrow and we'll record it." And if he wasn't feeling, he said, "You're not ready yet. Go work on it, then come back." So what this did is just fostered not only this outlet of, you know, artists who have a shot of trying to get their music recorded, but the proliferation of the genre in music stems from these guys and just working militantly. They had a plan and then they would just pump it out, single after single after single.
Mhm.
And I still to this day, you probably couldn't listen to everything they released in the 70s. within your lifespan because so much is lost, but there's so much that was recorded. And the way that it recorded is also fascinating to me because it was much like, say, when the Beatles first went in to record, you had 3 hours. You'd have two songs done and finished, recorded and out. Same kind of thing. You got in, they had the house band guys, and these guys got paid maybe $10 a session. It could have
Mhm.
been Sly and Robbie, it could have been the Barrett brothers.
Yep.
That's how they made their living. And unfortunately, a lot of these guys never got their due. They never got properly compensated. Some of the older legends that are still on tour, that's the only way they could finance their lives. But so the whole history of it kind of imbues the music with a certain magic for me. And I think for everybody else who loves it and has a passion like yourself.
Absolutely. Passion is absolutely number one. Hold on one second here. Blue, how much time we got here? 10 minutes. Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, dude. Passion, passion, passion. Real quick, man. What's coming up? I mean, I know there's more music gonna be dropping.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I just
What's coming up, man?
uh more music. So basically now it's like because I was on tour and I had to shift places for a bit. It's back to want to get back to the song idea day. I've really enjoyed that. And it's taking time because I've done so many collaborations. I just finished a remix for Buscemi, but it's featuring, I don't know if you ever heard Steve Ignorant, who was a 70s punk icon.
I have
And
not.
so he was new to me too. I think I'd heard his name before, but I just did a remix for that. I did one with Zion Trade. So there's always kind of different remixes and dub mixes going on. I'm really enjoying just sitting down and, I again changed my gear up. I'm working with a different setup, much smaller and pushing myself to see what can I do with that, which is why the name was titled for Rewired. It was
Yep.
because I always like to change it up because it forces you to find and develop new sounds and approaches to how you make music, which is going to affect everything down the line.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was watching one of your interviews, I think one of the most recent ones with some family in Poland, I believe. And you're talking, he was like, yeah, is it rewired? Does
Oh
that
yeah,
mean
yeah.
because you rewire everything? And you're like, actually, yeah.
Literally. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But what a
I know
great
you're talking about.
idea.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. It's, when I listen to something, like I always like something that grabs me, speaking about, what we were talking about earlier about what can you feel it like what brings you into a track or a record. One of the things is hearing sounds you've never heard before, and I think, or ways of creating sounds, and I think that is an absolutely wonderful idea to literally just go into your studio. Okay, well, we're going to do a new record. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to
Mhm.
unplug everything, and then we're going to add some new things and put some different plugs here. Absolutely. I mean, what
Yeah.
a cool way to do it.
Do you see what happens? Sometimes I'll set up, say, like like I use a specific DAW for most of the final recording editing, but I love Ableton for it's very stable and quick. So I might set up, a chain of 10 different effects plugins and then throw in, say, a guitar skank that I put, and then just turn on and off and see what happens, right? It could be tedious, right?
Mhm.
If you're too take too much time, but that's just a great way to go, oh, look, here's a new sound. Here's a new cascade of effects and it kind of works. And that will change what the song might have sounded like. Or you might hear, oh, I've got a new idea for this song. Now I want to take it from this direction. And it won't happen until you actually try and experiment, because all these songs come out of might have started as one thing and then they morph to another eventually. Like a lot of the songs on Rewired, this what you're hearing now is not what was sung to the artist, like the vocalist. They sung to a different rhythm. But once I get their vocals back, I want the song to help showcase what they're doing to the most potential possible. So I will rework a song if I have to, like the one with Dwayne Stevenson. There's, I think, 3 or 4 iterations of it. It did not start off as that one, and he didn't record the vocals to what's on the album. Like that's until you keep working until you find like, okay, that one's good, this one's cool, but does it sit well for long? Do I want to
Right.
keep hearing it? And
Right.
usually you'll know pretty quickly it's no. Then you move on to the next
Yep.
one.
Yep.
And if you're lucky, you get to the end. You went, I like that. That's the
Yep.
goal.
Does it catch your attention for the whole entire track? Is
Yeah.
it sound perfect to you? Do you have any criticisms about it? I love how you were talking about that earlier. Dude, Jesse, it has been an absolute blast. It's been a long time coming. Please, everybody, check
Yeah, man.
out Rewired and all the music that he's dropping. Endless amounts of music. It's dubmatix.com, at Dubmatix on the socials, at RealDubmatix on YouTube. Definitely check it out on Bandcamp. I got one more question for you. The first
Yeah,
time
man.
I interview somebody, they always get this question again, and it's been a pleasure. What does reggae mean to you?
I think it's the heartbeat and soul of music in a lot of ways. It's the pulse, and one of the greatest things about reggae, Bob Marley said it best: when it hits, it feels no pain, because it's always positive. Even though it might talk about strife, it's never talking negatively. It's just an uplifting music, and that's one of the things that when you hear it, you got to move.
Mm, absolutely. I
And
love it.
I've formed my life around it. So, that's the power it has.
Yeah, it's all powerful, man. Everybody check
Yeah.
out reggae music. If you haven't, you're late. Check out Dubmatix. If you haven't, you're late. Jesse, it's been an absolute blast, brother. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Gentlemen, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and big ups, man. Big ups to Simmer Down and all the listeners out there, man.
Absolutely.